Yeah, so to start off with, just kind of give yourself a guideline, know kind of how you want to structure your story, and that's something that you can tell after you've done the interviews. You can kind of determine for yourself what stood out to you the most in those interviews and what maybe some of those better answers to questions were, and that's going to be the stuff that you're going to put at the front. You want those big good quotes towards the front and towards the end of the story, so making sure that you can kind of balance that evenly. Following the basic pyramid structure is a really good way to do it, just making sure that your most important stuff is at the top, but then I also like to keep something that's important for the end, or a good well-rounded quote for the end. So just kind of going through those interviews, transcribing the interviews ahead of time is a great way to do that too. Or I guess I don't necessarily do that all the time either, but at least listening to the interview as you're writing, and then you can kind of get that line in the quote, and then you can rearrange those quotes and lines in the story after you kind of have a rough draft of it. Yeah, so definitely being able to know my different story structures and how those will work for different stories. If it's a feature, making it a lighter story, maybe starting off with some of those impactful quotes, and then making sure that my stories that are really heavily news follow pretty much the inverted pyramid style, so that people are getting that information that they need right away. Also, once you get to writing a little bit more, you can write a lot faster too, so you can get a lot more stories done and not necessarily have to do all of the transcribing that you might do when you first start off. You can kind of already know what you want to use and not have to write out all of that information ahead of time. I guess, well, since I do all my interviews recorded, I have the little time code at the top, so I just typically make a mental note of where we were at in the interview as to, oh, that quote stuck out to me, that's a good place to do it. Starting off with my more basic questions within an interview too makes it a little bit easier, because I know that my bigger, better quotes are usually towards the end of an interview, so I can almost weed through the stuff at the beginning as stuff that I would just write in my own words, so that can make it a little bit faster to get to some of those better quotes that'll be kind of the bulk part of the story. Definitely don't use too many big quotes. That's something that I've had to learn the hard way and really get used to doing. There are some quotes that you can't cut down, but typically making sure that you're just using a smaller portion of that quote, because people don't want to read through an entire long quote and will typically skim over that. So as much as you can word a story in your own words as possible, typically ends up going better. It's typically hard-hitting news like those. You can beat the other reporters and the other outlets to a story that will typically do the best, but it's really a wide range of stories within Ag Week as to what people are clicking on. If they've got a big name and we do a feature story on them, those typically do pretty well too. I definitely like to write feature stories because they're usually more lighthearted, more fun. You get kind of those neater stories, that human aspect to it, and that also makes for great TV coverage because you have some of that human aspect. Human interest stories are great, but yeah.